everyone, it's Shaw from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to create this rainbow background birthday card for one of my friends, and we're going to be using products from different companies. Bee Stamps products are the Quilted Hearts stencil, as well as the Big Buzzwords stamp set, and the MFT is the lined up diagonally background stamp. So we're going to start off by creating a background which measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I used a piece of Bristol Smooth white cardstock, and we're going to ink up very lightly a rainbow background. So we're using Distress Oxide for this technique, and I'm using this one is Abandoned Coral and going in very, very lightly. So I'm picking very pale shades of the color for each color family. So Abandoned Coral and then Dried Marigold is the next one, and you'll see that I'm putting a tiny bit of Distress Oxide on my brush and then going in very light-handed, which is extremely hard for me, but you'll notice that my camera wasn't even shaking, so I was not going in that hard. So it is possible for me to do that, so I have to learn how to do that more. And I like the way it looks because you can kind of build up the layers. I didn't want it too dark because we're going to do a technique on top of this, which it's a tone on tone. We're actually going to use the same exact colors. And this one is Scattered Straw, Distress Oxide. For the next part of this, we're going to use the same colors. So I wanted to go in with a very, very light hand here. So you'll notice I put a couple of the colors down, and then I will go back and forth over the previous colors, making sure everything blends together nicely. For the green, I am using Shabby shutters, and as always, I will start off of the paper. That's why I have this little magnetic mat from We Are Memory Keepers. I start off of the paper on the mat, blend it onto, and then I go off of the other side. And I think that it just helps to take some of that ink off, and you don't get that harsh brush line that you'll sometimes get. The blue is Tumbled Glass, and then I'm going to go in with some shaded lilac for the purple. So again, putting the color on, going back in with the other color, blending brushes, making sure everything blends together nicely. And you have a really, when we're done this, I'll have a really, really pretty pastel rainbow background. So I made this to send to one of my friends who loves rainbows, and I just thought this was really pretty, and I have never tried this kind of multi-step technique before where I've done, instead of just taking a solid color background, I made my own background, then did a tone-on-tone stamp on top of it, and then did a stencil over top of that, and then did a sentiment over top. So we're going to be doing lots of steps in this card, so you don't have to do all of them, but I wanted to show you how you could step it up a little bit if you wanted to do more than just ink up a background and put a sentiment on it. So now I'm using some removable adhesive on the back of the sheet. I'm also taking my Misty corner and putting it, I had put that in the Misty before I taped it down, because when you're using a background stamp like this, you don't want to put your paper right up against the edge because there's going to be a little piece that doesn't stamp. There's a lip on the Misty as well as most of these stamping tools, and you're not going to get edge-to-edge coverage if you do it, if you put the paper right up against both of the sides, like if you put it in the corner of the Misty. I hope that makes sense. So now I'm using the exact same colors that we used. So Abandoned Coral, Dried Marigold, Scattered Straw, Shabby Shutters, Tumbled Glass, and Shaded Lilac to go down this. And I initially used the entire ink pad, and then I realized that I was getting some lines and I had a little bit bigger sections than I really wanted. So now I'm going in with my blending brush and adding color to the entire stamp. The only thing that I didn't like about the way this turned out was that I actually had some colors that were pretty far out of where the original color was on the stamp, because I had started it off at the top, and that's not exactly where that red starts. That red starts a little bit down. So the colors were slightly off. So it made kind of a funny little green in the yellow. Some of the, I think, green got up there on the second time. But I figured out how to cover it up. So it's not, you really won't be able to see it in the end. So when I stamped it down the first time, you could hardly see it, again, because it's tone on tone, and you really need to do this multiple times before you'll get a good result. After I did it the second time, I just did a couple of colors and then stamped it down, and you can really see a difference. Another option here would be to very, very lightly mist the stamp with water. Stamp that down. Now, I'm talking very, very fine mist of water. You don't want droplets on there because then your pattern won't come through. There'll be like a water droplet on there. So you just want a very fine mist, and you can stamp that down. And you'll also get a form of tone on tone, but it'll be oxidized. So Distress Oxides react with water, and so you could do it that way. You could heat emboss it in white. There's so many different things you could do. So now I am taking the Honeybee stencil, that Quilted Heart stencil, and lining it up where I wanted it to go. And then we are going to ink the stencil up with one shade darker of the colors, or one shade darker that I had of the colors of Distress Oxide. This stencil was a little bit bowed, so I did have to use the magnet to hold it down. So we are using Candied Apple on top of that Abandoned Coral. On top of the dried Marigold, we are using Wild Honey, which I think that was one of the new colors that I just got. So I'm putting the hearts down, and you can see I'm going over some of the old ones so the colors blend together, just like we did with the background. Now I'm going in with Squeeze Lemonade over the scattered straw. That was the yellow that we used. And then we used Shabby Shutters, and now we're going over it with Bundled Sage. And a lot of these colors are really just like one shade darker than the one that I had. So it kind of, it came out pretty cool. We're going over the Tumbled Glass with Stormy Sky, so both of the sky type colors there. And then over the Shaded Lilac, we are using, we did use Shaded Lilac again. So maybe, I might have accidentally messed that up. I might have not meant to do Shaded Lilac, or did I do a different color underneath? I'm going to have to go back and look. I will write down the colors of Distress Oxide in the description box. But you can see the middle one is the one that really didn't come out, that yellowish one. I wasn't really happy with that. So now I'm going to go back over, and I realized that some of the hearts didn't come out the best. So I'm going to go over some of them. And that was the first time I used that Stormy Sky, and it looked like it was very dry to me, but the color did come out. So there you go. And I think I used a little bit too much blue in the green, but again, it's fine. And that yellow area really didn't come out as well as I thought. I let it dry for a while because, again, Distress Oxides stay wet for a long time because you can do different techniques with them. So now I'm inking up the Big Buzzword, big, in the scripty font. I wasn't sure if I was going to use the solid one or the scripty one. I'm using my Stamp Perfect, and this way I can stamp it multiple times to get a nice solid image. I'm going to heat emboss the area because we are going to heat emboss part of the sentiment in gold, so it's going to say Big Birthday Wishes. And I'm using my anti-static embossing powder that I have. This is the light kale and clay, to go over the area so that none of that stray gold bossing in powder sticks to any areas that I didn't want it to. So we're going to ink it up with some Versamark watermark ink. We're going to stamp it down. Again, with these ones, you want to be really careful. You just want to tap it down on there. You don't want to smush it because you don't want to smush the letters. It will make your embossing hard to read. So I do it a couple times, but press gently on it. We're going to pull out some Martha Stewart Gold embossing powder. And this, again, I've been using her embossing powders a lot. These are probably 10 plus years old, but they still work perfectly. So I'm going to heat set that, and I apologize that you can't really see it. I love watching heat embossing. I think it's just such a cool process to see it. So now I'm also going to use, this is the first time I had ever used this sparkle pen. So I don't know that I used it correctly. I don't love the way that it works. I did use it for some small areas on the Hippo ATC card that I uploaded yesterday, which was made after this one. I went back in with a paintbrush to kind of smooth some of that out. I wanted it to be more like the Spectrum Noir sparkle pens that just leaves a not thickness, it just leaves some glitter. So I kind of spread it out, and I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about this pen yet. I think it may have been user error the first time, but I didn't find it to be the easiest to use. I find sparkle pens to be a little bit easier to use, but it could just be user error. So I'm not going to count it out yet. I'm going to use it a couple more times before I really decide if I like it or not. So I'm just going in and adding more of that sparkle to the loop. And then I will wash that brush off because I don't want that sparkle to dry in the paintbrush. This is the paintbrush that I use for a lot of my fine detail, or most of my watercoloring when I do Inktense watercolor pencils, which is mainly how I watercolor. So I will wipe that off so that none of that sparkle stays and the bristles are okay. So now I am going to get ready to finish the card off, and I found these gems. These are ones that I got for free from Honeybee. And I thought, how cute is this? Their colors are very similar to the ones in the background. So I was just going to randomly go around and place the jewels on there. I used my Tim Holtz picker tool, and Lucy was up on the desk, so you're going to see her. Look, she was going after the gems. She thought that we were playing. I apologize for her big butt in the video. That's actually just her side, I think. She loves to hop up on the desk. I have 2 big lamps on there, and I guess they throw off some heat, and she just likes being in the sunshine and, you know, the heat. So she thinks that I cleaned off my desk just for her. So she's been in a lot of my videos lately. So I apologize for the big floof that you will see in the top right-hand corner, but I think she does leave at some point. But, you know, she's my crafting buddy. She's 18 and a half. She and Fred will both be 19 in August. So, and then she was moving the camera. So I was yelling at her in this because she loves rubbing her head against the camera. I don't know. She's a little weirdo. But like I said, they will be 19 in August. So at this point, it's kind of like, you know, you're old. You can kind of do pretty much whatever you want. So just going back in and adding these gems, there's no real rhyme or reason to where I add them, just where I thought that it looked good. Once the gems were where I wanted them, I took the piece of paper over to my paper trimmer and trimmed off a little sliver on both the left and the right side, glued it down to a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, black card base, so that you could see black on either side. I'm going to go back in and glue those little strips that I cut off to the sides of the card. I thought that it would help to decorate the inside, because I don't generally do that. Sometimes I stamp a sentiment, sometimes I don't. But I thought this would look really cute and a good way to tie the inside to the outside. So I'm going to glue these down into place, and you'll see that I get a lot of glue on the right-hand side of the left strip. And when I start to rub it off, you can see like a sheen to it. I'm going to go back over that with a marker. I'm also going to go back with a mono sand eraser to try to get as much of it out as I can. Use a little bit less glue on this one. On the right-hand side, I learned from the left side. So the bottoms are a little bit big. I will trim down the edges of that. So there you see the mono sand eraser. That's not really working. I do take a alcohol marker, not a Copic. I have some random markers. I'm not really, they might be Spectrum Noir markers. I'm not really sure. I got a pack of like gray and blacks, and a lot of times that I will use them to run outlines along my images when I fussy cut them out. And there you go. You can, I'm just putting that line down there, and unless you tilt it in the light, you can't really see that. So now we're going to use the sentiments from MFT, and I believe it is Sassy Birthday Greetings. But again, I'll have all of that in the description box at the bottom. And we are also going to heat emboss the sentiment. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the front. We are going to use the light kale and clay powder on this, go over the whole entire area, and then we're going to ink up the sentiment. So I'm using my Stamp Perfect for this. I go back and forth between the Misty and the Stamp Perfect. Honestly, I think I like the Stamp Perfect a little bit better, but it is a little bit smaller than the Misty. So happy 29th birthday from your 110-pound friend. My friend that I sent this to and I are very snarky, so I thought that she would appreciate that. Using that same gold embossing powder, and I had a piece of paper to catch the embossing powder and I just couldn't find it, so I had to use that scrap from a paper pack. So you can see there the heat embossing. I love that. It's such magic. I'm going to wipe away the rest of that the powder that is the residue that's left, and that's the card for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll see you again real soon for another video. Bye!